Yes. So anyway, thank you everybody for coming on board and joining us today. I'm going to see, can I share my screen, which I should have figured out before this. Here we are. So, as I say, thank you very much for coming on board. We'll jump on. Maybe some other people may join a little later. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule today to chat with us about Greenbelt's teak plantation investment in Panama. It's our second venture into Panama, which has proved very successful, a tried and tested formula which has proved very positive returns and delivered very positive returns to those who invested previously and will likely to do at least the same here. My name is Maurice Ryan. I work with Greenbelt Limited. We're a private forestry management company. I'm a director of the business and also a head of business development within Greenbelt. Teak obviously has been around for many centuries and has had many uses over the years, from shipbuilding to internal and external joinery, house building, construction, and so on and so forth. Often described as the queen of tropical timber. It has been ranked here by a guy called Dietrich Brandis, who was chief timber buyer for Queen Victoria, I think, as similar in value and quality to diamonds and gold. Some of the most attractive elements to teak is its durability, its strength, but also its quality as a timber and its beauty as a timber. Colour, particularly in the heartwood, makes it extremely attractive when it's in each application that it has. We're Greenbelt, who are promoting this investment. Greenbelt are a private forestry management company. We're based out of Ireland. We're around since 1982 and have established more than 400,000 acres of forestry in Ireland alone for private and institutional landowners. We've operated across the UK, into Europe, Eastern Europe, obviously Central America with Panama previously, and explored options and consulted on projects in South America, and even sometimes a little further afield. Our Panama project is co-managed by the two gentlemen you may see on your screen there, Miguel and Hessel, from Panama Reforestation Services. They have a combined, we won't maybe get into exact numbers, but more than 50 years experience in professional forestry management, particularly in teak plantations all across Central and South America, with a particular focus most recently in establishing high-yielding, productive plantations in Panama. We worked with them from our first initiation in Panama in 2005 onwards, and we are absolutely delighted to have them here today as our in-country managers, and hopefully be able to answer some questions that you may have on the ground. To date, we have 212 productive hectares established since 2018. It's an 83% productive area. The balance of that is made up of areas preserved for biodiversity. The clones we're planted with are an improved clone, which produces a much stronger, straighter timber, grows much quicker, so it reduces your term length, and thus the ultimate return to it. And as I mentioned, our biodiversity element is preserved. For 2021, and the reason we're on the call today is we are targeting a raise of 2.5 million euros to acquire further 600 hectares across Panama to cluster and consolidate the areas within the region that you'll see on the screen here, P1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and the areas in between. Timber prices, or land prices I should say, are attractive for acquisition currently. We've identified some areas that are ready to be purchased, so we're obviously in a position to move as quickly as we possibly can on that. And obviously the consolidation enhances our portfolio, and also particularly from an exit strategy, it enhances it and makes it a lot more attractive to potential purchasers. I have a little short video here just showing So that's just a short video that can give you a highlight of some of the areas that have been planted up to now, how well they are performing. I mean, there's nothing there longer than 3 years of age, and there's a significant growth in it. The picture you're seeing on your screen now, that's a 1-year-old plantation. That picture sent from our team in Panama late last year, and to show how it's operating. So how this investment is structured is thus, it's set up as a limited partnership. So each investor is an individual limited partner and invests in 2 different vehicles. Vehicles are obviously limited by the amount of land that it can be owned in one vehicle, which is up to 200 hectares. So we can add on an infinite number of vehicles to this, and they're called PT1, PTIs, so Panama Teak Investment 1, 2, 3, etc. And they're a limited partnership, and returns are delivered back to the limited partners and the general partner, which is Greenbelt. That's established in Ireland, and it's registered with the central bank as an alternative investment fund. In Panama, there is a limited partner, or an entity in Panama is established which acquires the land, and the Irish entity makes a business loan to that entity, and that's how returns are passed through. We have received tax and legal advice on this from Deloitte in Panama and Ireland. So it's quite a robust offering from that perspective. We will look to enhance the holding from where we are currently at 200 hectares, significantly upwards to 2,400 hectares and beyond if we can raise funds to match that. The return we project is probably a conservative enough 8%, but we don't want to overpromise on this. But certainly 8% is a very achievable rate of return. Some of the impacts that will influence that return rate are the purchase price of the land, obviously, the term length, and then your exit price. Potential exit strategy here, similar to our original Panama Teak investment in 2005 and 6 and 7, was an exit to TIMO, which is a timberland investment manager from the United States, which was in the shape of a pension fund. We exited quite successfully out of that in the region of about 11% per investor. So again, based on the return profile, what we're going to look at here is up to 2021, we've acquired just over 200 hectares. We're targeting 600 hectares for the next 3 years and 400 hectares in 2024. At an average price in dollars per hectare of about $5,000. As I say, currently the average price is a little bit less than that, so your return profile is immediately affected positively with that. And we've highlighted here that our year-on-year valuation growth, including our after costs, etc., is in the region of about 7.5%. I'll deal with the tax side of things in a moment. I'm sure people will have questions around that. So historically, you'll look at timber prices. Obviously, as I say, the exit price, if we did manage this through to year 18, which is a projected clear fill year on this, or each plantation, based on the clones and the conditions, your timber prices have continually grown and would probably exceed the natural timber price globally. Obviously, natural timber, natural teak forests are becoming more and more protected, and less of it is available to the market. So obviously that will have an impact on that value. But from plantation teak, which is probably more broadly used in lower end markets, the timber price has been very, very strong, and we would see probably prices in the region of increases over the last 10 years in about 11% per annum. So those of you who aren't familiar with Panama, it's in Central America. It's a dollar-based economy. I have circled roughly, very, very roughly, where some of these plantations are made. It's in an area called the Darien, which is at the end of the Pan American Highway. Panama is probably most famous for the Panama Canal, which is in Panama City. Or obviously it's across the whole country, but you can see it across Panama City. Panama obviously is an extremely well-developed country. It's a dollar-based economy. Some have referred to it as the 51st state. I'm not sure how much they would like that reference, but that's how it's discussed. It's got a very, very strong infrastructure, 2 markets, forest timber, obviously both from an export perspective, but an internal logistics side of things too. It's got strong tax incentives, which are obviously very important. They welcome foreign direct investment, and particularly investment into plantations and reforestation projects across the country. This isn't a greenbelt only venture. It's been, as I say, well versed. You have companies from all across the globe, including Switzerland and Denmark, who would have invested heavily into it, and indeed Harvard University would have invested heavily into it, which Miguel and Hessen would have managed on behalf of as well. I keep referring to how quickly and how strongly and well the Panama teak will grow in our plantations. Again, I mean, this is just another example. You'll see the large leaf on these trees, which obviously improves it from a growth perspective. You'll see the undergrowth is managed extremely well, very sustainably managed from our in-country team to keep the competition down. You'll see this from one of our plantations, Ricardo, which is the name of the farmer who sold it in 2018, how quickly they're growing. I mean, the tree on the left, well, as I'm looking at it, I assume you're seeing it the same way, is probably 8 to 10 meters in height, growing extremely well. Canopy is beginning to close on it, which means the leaves are closing in on top and getting ready for thinning. You'll see from the larger picture of it, of this particular one, where the biodiversity has been maintained, which you see in sort of what look like sort of more mature trees or hedgerows in throughout it. So that would account for the 17% biodiversity, which is protected and maintained across the whole, all of our plantations. Here you'll see the 2019 plantation is taken obviously with a drone from a direct aerial view. You'll see the quality of the land, which it looks relatively dry, but it's high yielding, and you can see the impact that is here on the right hand side on a slight slope. The warm tropical climate is ideally suited for this. It's moist. It's has a very narrow temperature range from sort of 32 to 36 degrees Celsius. It's got a strong level of rainfall, anywhere from 275 millimeters a month to 500 millimeters a month, depending on the season. But when it's wet, it's very, very wet. But obviously then the trees respond extremely well to this, and they grow at a phenomenal rate. And to put that into better perspective, we look here at a 1-year-old plantation, which was planted there in 2020, i.e. last year. You'll see a person standing beside the tree. So that tree after a year is over 2 meters in height. And again, the vegetation, the competing vegetation has been kept to a minimum, which will allow the trees to get above that and get around to closing canopy. When you get to a point of closing canopy, and you want to enhance the value of the crop and the remaining crop, you look at thinning out the plantation. You'll take out a certain percentage based on conditions per site, based on the quality of the timber, and particularly focus on the remaining timber and how you manage that through to its clear fell. Even if the strategy of our investment is not to manage the clear fell, that is our goal as managers, is to manage that and hand it over as a best case scenario to the next person who will be managing it through to clear fell. You take out your short thinnings, you cut them into 3 meter lengths. They can be exported either in a cargo ship like this, or to mills, or to local markets, or indeed to foreign markets such as the US, etc. End use markets for teak, I alluded to them originally. I mean, the teak market has been around for forever. You see decking, flooring, internal joinery in particular. Both, it's an extremely strong, robust material. Beautiful color. You can see the grading in it and the grain. It's absolutely beautiful. It's great to look at, and produced very, very well. It's you know, and the market for it is a continually growing market, particularly in developing countries, where they would be well used to it. I mentioned before the tax structure. So the tax structure in Panama is geared towards investment, particularly from a forestry perspective. They look on it very favorably for returns in terms of income tax, property tax, transferring tax, introduction taxes, and direct financing. What that means for you as investors, the limited partners from the foot of the tax exemption, no corporation tax will be paid on profits arising from the sale in Panama. You can read this at your own leisure after this and in more detail. There's capital gain currently at a rate of 10% or 3% of the cadastral value, plus a 2% immovable property tax, which would be similar to our USC, Universal Social Charge. There is a double taxation treaty between Ireland and Panama, which means if there is a partnership sale, capital gains will only be paid here in Ireland. Obviously, with that in mind, the currency transfer rate would be extremely important here, the currency exchange rate here. So we can actually, we've taken advice on this previously because we can never purport to be experts in that. But on our last exit, we took advice on opportune times to transfer the money from Panama to Ireland to take advantage of more favourable rates. Once the proceeds have been received, the profits, net profits, will be distributed to the limited partners and general partner, and those fees and profits, those profits will be net of all fees, as were the numbers that I suggested earlier on at 7.5%, were all net of any costs and fees that could be incurred. With any investment, obviously, there is risk. I mentioned the currency side of things, and that is one element to bear in mind. You do have a certain level of luxury insofar as that you can leave the money in Panama until the currency is more in your favour. Obviously, from a growth and a forestry perspective, the three main risks are fire, pestilence, and wind. Teak is relatively resistant to fire. The most regular occurrence of fires will be due to lightning strikes, but they're extremely isolated, so you tend not to lose larger blocks of forestry. Pestilence obviously can occur. It does tend to occur more in natural teak forests as opposed to plantation forests such as this, but it's not completely immune to it. And of course, our old friend, the wind. The biggest risk to this at this point for this condition is post-thinning. When you've opened up the forest and it's a little bit more exposed than it had been previously. And this is where the skill and expertise of Greenbelt and our in-country managers come into play here, that we don't thin too late, we don't over-thin the plantation, we manage it against prevailing winds. As with all of those risks, our sustainable forestry management practices will help mitigate against these risks. It can't eradicate them entirely, but it will help to mitigate against them. That is everything I would like to say at the moment. We're here for as long as you would like to be here for. Miguel and Hessel will answer any questions you might have on it, as will I. And of course, we're open for conversation afterwards. My details are above, or here on the screen in front of you. So my mobile and my email address, and of course our website there with a direct link to the panel side of things. But please do pass on any questions you might have. If you want to put them here in the Q&A or in the chat section.
Maurice.
Yes.
Maybe we should talk to them a little bit about our experience with teak in Panama since Greenbelt and Panama Reforestation Services met.
Perfect.
So in 2005, Maurice Ryan came to Panama looking for a teak plantation to buy, and actually it was the first farm we bought. And so I'm kind of Irish because my last name is Vallarino, but also from my mom's side is Cox. So I am Irish. So we got along very well. And we started this project using seeds from Costa Rican plantations that Hessel managed, from very good quality seeds. Since then, we've been using clones. We cloned a few thousand Costa Rican trees, and we from them chose 11, which were the best. And then we moved to Malaysian clones, which are the ones we've been planting since for the last 3-4 years. The difference from those clones is that one, they grow better, they grow straighter, so you need to plant less. So and since they grow faster, your cost of maintenance go down, and your trees are probably 20% bigger in the first year, and they keep that rate all the way through the ages we have now, which are the oldest ones we have from Malaysia are 4 years old, and they are 20% bigger than the Costa Rican clones and more than the seeds. So we have very high expectations. It's one of the, I think the most important things we've seen with managing plantations is that opening up the space is key, because thinnings are really not a return to the investor. They basically help a little bit of the management to cover costs. But if you can save costs without planting so many and having them grow faster, then you do less thinnings, which costs a lot of money and put everybody a lot of pressure. All the team is equipment, everybody is under pressure for a long time. So now we're more driven to lower densities. We started planting 700 trees, 711 trees per hectare. Now we're planting in the better sites 400 with the Malaysian trees. And so that is, the future is big trees. That's where the value is. Teak prices are based on girth. The smaller the girth, the smaller the lower the price, and the bigger the girth, the better price. For example, we just harvested this year a 16-year-old plantation, and from the point of the tree, which is like 40 to 50 centimeters, you get $140 per cubic meter hopus. And for the bigger log, the first log, you get $400 per cubic meter. So our challenge is making the trees grow big and valuable. And this has been interesting learning curve for us. I think we are, we're one of the most innovative groups. We manage 7,000 hectares planted of 10,000 hectares in Darien, and 2,500 of 7,000 in Chorrera, which is where the canal is. It's a concession. I think Mary Hessel has something to say also.
Well, no, I agree with everything you have said so far, Maurice. I hope you recorded it. It was a perfect wrap-up of the whole situation. There are some other things that come always in the picture. I think timing is important, because at this moment there is a COVID crisis. For example, cattle prices are relatively low, pushing land prices down. So land is now more affordable than it was like 3 years ago. The other reason that land is now a good buy is that the land prices were under a lot of pressure, because there was a lot of large TIMOs, timber investment management organizations from the US, investing in tea plantations in Panama. They basically followed us after that. And that put a lot of pressure on land prices that went up a lot. But they have stopped during the crisis. They don't buy anymore. They have their scale. They have everything they want to have. So there's not many people buying at this moment. So that is the point I want to add to the equation, to the story. That land is at this moment, I think, affordable and relatively cheap. In other words, we better hurry up.
Very good. Thanks, guys. I got a couple of questions in here. Rory asked about tax liabilities in Ireland. Are they subject to full income tax, USC and PRSI? It would be, the dividends returns will be open to capital gains tax on that, because of the treaty, in the double treaty. It will depend on when it exits, but you're likely to pay capital gains tax on the positives, or the uplift in it. And USC, obviously, and PRSI, I think, will be additional to that. Going up here, and asked, from a pension or personal finance, the taxation treated the same, and projected returns percentage net of gross, or net or gross. The projected returns are net of all costs. And from a pension or personal finance, it depends on how you're structured. The dividend will come back to limited partnerships, and how you exit that limited partnership is will be based, and I don't want to give a loose answer here, but it will be based on your own personal circumstances and your tax, and how it was structured, and how the structure of your pension fund will be. If you've a self-administered pension fund and they include forestry within it, it'll be treated a bit more favourably on that. Miles Robin is on the call, and he's helped us with some of our tax things on this before. But we can explore that in more detail on an individual basis. There was another question here. Lawrence asked about the plantations affecting the local economy and environment. And it's a good question. It's something we're very, very conscious of, and the lad alluded to it there, that with cattle prices being low and land prices coming down as a reflection of that, and we've seen something similar in Ireland when agricultural practices are struggling. People leave the country and move to urban areas, so they leave rural areas and go to it. However, with plantations like this and the additional employment that can be generated from it, from the planting and management, harvesting of timber, the transport of timber, whether a hotel or guest houses or shops, whatever, to service the people who are working and living down there can open up, you start to seeing a bit of life back into communities and wouldn't have been there previously. Obviously, we have our in-country teams subcontract and contract workers locally, and we try and maintain good long-term relations with these guys so they can continue to do and complete all the work on these sites throughout. And obviously, the availability of labour is very, very important to make sure all of this is all our targets are hit. And that brings me to Ken's question: what performance measuring reporting is planned? What we've done to date is we have inventory plots throughout each of the plantations, and the same points are measured annually to see growth rates and to measure the performance of the plantation. We value it on an annual basis, where we are, as I say, registered as an alternative investment fund, so we're obliged to have it. We have auditors and audited accounts for the last year are being issued later today, actually, as luck would have it. So it's everything that we try and do, everything we do is trying to be as transparent as possibly can in terms of our management activities from our Panama Reforestation Services partners, that they explain everything they do in an itemized fee structure and structure in terms of per hectare and per plantation of what is carried out. So we try and have it as open and transparent as we possibly can and give as much detail to the investors, because obviously with it being far away and difficult to visit, it's important that we have everybody on board and as trustworthy as we can manage it, you know. So if anybody fancies a trip to Panama over the next few months, this is your opportunity. You know, you can put it down to work and investment.
Yeah, COVID here is very low.
Good. So we have to quarantine for 2 weeks.
No, not here. Not from Ireland.
I think people here on this chat may actually like to quarantine in Panama for 2 weeks. I know I wouldn't mind it too much. Get a bit of sun on my back, you know, when I can finally get my hair cut. But yeah, so it's my eyebrows need cutting more than my hair. Listen, does anyone else have anything else they would like to answer? I know, listen, the tax question is always, the answers can be a little bit sort of broad and vague, but we'll happily work through it with you and we can try and get a bit of advice on it. And wherever your tax, share any of the tax information we have with you. And obviously then we can, if you have a tax consultant, we would always recommend you speak to them. They're the professionals in this. Nobody grows trees better than us, but there are people who know tax better than us. Okay. Well, I think that's everything. Listen, again, I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of their schedule to join in today and to interact and ask some questions. You have my contact details, so please do get in touch, pass on anything you like. This session has been recorded and it's available for anybody who would like to have it and go back over any items. As I said, I can go through it individually with anybody. I'd also like to thank Miguel and Hessel for getting up, and it's 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning in Panama now. So it's on a Friday morning, but they're smiling, so that's a good start. So they've obviously had their morning coffee. So listen, thank you very much for everybody, and we'll be in touch very soon. Thanks, Miguel. Thanks, Hessel. Bye-bye.
Sure, thanks. A pleasure.